When Eli Carter opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was sunlight filtering through deerskin lodge walls, turning the air gold and alive with dust. The second thing he felt was the steady warmth of another human being breathing beside him. For a heartbeat, he thought he was dead. Men like him didn't wake up in places like this, not unarmed, and certainly not beside the daughter of an Apache chief. He lay perfectly still, afraid that even the smallest movement might shatter whatever fragile miracle had spared him. Beside him slept Iona, the chief's daughter, her dark hair spilling across the woven blankets, her face calm, untouched by fear. Outside the lodge, the low murmur of voices drifted through the dawn air, layered with the soft snort of horses and the crick of leather. It wasn't silence. It was waiting. Eli remembered the night before in broken flashes blood on the sand, the ambush in the canyon, his horse screaming as it fell. He remembered fighting until his rifle jammed, remembered hands dragging him from the dirt, remembered thinking his last sight would be Apache blades raised against the moon. Instead, he'd woken here. Slowly, carefully, he sat up. His clothes were folded neatly at the edge of the bedding. His wounds, deep cuts that should have killed him, had been cleaned and bound with skill that spoke of long experience. He ran a shaking hand through his beard and whispered to himself, "What in God's name have I walked into?" Iona stirred. Her eyes opened, sharp and dark as a hawk's. For a moment, they simply looked at one another. There was no fear in her gaze, only certainty. "You are awake," she said calmly. Eli swallowed. "I didn't mean no harm," he said, his voice rough. "If your people think I dishonored you, they do not think," she interrupted. "They know." That single word sent ice through his spine. Before he could speak again, the lodge flap lifted. Morning light poured in. With it came the presence of power. Chief Noko stood framed against the sunrise, tall and unmoving, his face carved. From years of war and wisdom, behind him stretched the village, and beyond it, lining the ridge as far as the eye could see, stood 321 Apache warriors, silent, armed, watching. Nako's voice was steady, carrying the weight of generations. "You woke beside my daughter," he said. "That is not an accident. Among my people, it is a promise." Eli's heart hammered like hooves on stone. Outside, the warriors began to step forward, one by one forming a circle around the lodge. The wind carried the scent of sage and dust. Somewhere, a drum sounded once, then twice. This morning. The chief continued, "You will decide who you are." Eli looked at Iona, at the calm strength in her eyes, and knew that whatever choice lay ahead would cost him everything he'd ever been, and give him something the frontier rarely allowed. A man to have. A future. The sun had barely cleared the eastern ridge when Eli Carter was led from the lodge. He walked barefoot on cold earth, every step measured, every breath heavy with the knowledge that few white men had ever stood. Where he now stood, fewer still had lived to tell of it. The village had awakened fully. Fires crackled, horses stamped, women and children watched silently from behind lodge flaps. No one shouted, no one threatened. The silence itself was the judgment. The warriors formed a wide circle around the open ground. Their number exact and deliberate 321 men. each bearing scars, feathers, paint, and the weight of battles fought. Long before Eli had ever set foot on the plains, rifles rested against shoulders, lances pointed skyward. Not one weapon was aimed at him, yet Eli felt more exposed than he ever had with a gun to his head. Chief Nako stepped into the center of the circle. The old man's hair was streaked with silver, his eyes dark pools of memory. When he spoke, his voice carried easily, as if the land itself leaned closer to listen. This man was found alive among our enemies, Nako said. He was wounded, yet he did not beg. He was helpless, yet he did not curse. My daughter chose to bring him into her lodge. A murmur rippled through the warriors low, restrained, dangerous. Ajana stepped forward then, standing beside Eli. She wore a simple buckskin dress, her hair braided with a single eagle feather. She stood tall, unafraid, her presence alone, quieting the circle. I chose him, she said clearly. I found him dying in the canyon. I could have left him for the vultures. I did not. One of the elders spoke, his voice sharp. Mercy does not erase law. Nako nodded once. No, it reveals it. He turned to Eli. You have lived on stolen land, the chief said plainly. You have ridden beneath flags that hunted my people. You have survived a night in my daughter's lodge. Among us, such a thing has meaning. Eli felt his throat tighten. He had faced gunfights, stampedes, hunger, and war, but never this. He removed his hat slowly and held it to his chest. I won't pretend I understand your ways, he said. But I swear on my life, I never touched her with dishonor. She saved me. That's the truth of it. The warriors watched closely, not just his words, but his posture, his eyes, the tremor he tried to hide. Truth, among the Apache, was not spoken. It was shown. An elder woman stepped forward, her face lined like dry riverbeds. She studied Eli for a long moment, then reached out and pressed her fingers to his bound wounds. He did not resist healing, she said. A proud man resists. Another warrior spoke. He did not try to flee. A third added. He slept without a weapon. Each sentence landed like a stone on a scale, tipping something unseen. Still, doubt lingered. One warrior, broad-shouldered, painted for war, stepped into the circle. His eyes burned with anger. My brother died last winter because of men like him, he said, pointing at Eli. If the law means anything, his blood must answer for that. The air grew heavy. Eli felt the truth settle in his bones. This was the moment that would decide everything. Iana stepped between them. If blood is the only language we speak, she said, her voice steady but fierce, then we will never stop bleeding. She turned to her father. You taught me that strength is not proven by killing the helpless. It is proven by choosing wisely when the knife is already in your hand. The chief closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, his decision was clear. This man will not die today, Nako declared. But he will not walk free either. The warriors leaned in. He will be judged by action, the chief continued. He will stay among us until the next full moon. He will work. He will share our food. He will face our enemies if they come. If he proves false, his life ends. If he proves true, Nako looked at Elion, then at Ayana. Then the law of the morning applies. Eli dared to ask, "What law is that?" The chief's voice was calm. Absolute. The law that says a man who wakes beside the chief's daughter at dawn does not leave alone. The drum sounded once. The circle broke. The warriors stepped back, not in threat, but in acceptance. Eli exhaled for the first time since waking. He didn't know what the future held: marriage, death, or something far more dangerous than both. But as Ayana met his gaze, a faint, knowing smile on her lips, he understood one thing clearly. The West had already decided his fate. By midday, the word had spread beyond the village, carried on horseback and whispered through ravines. The chief's daughter had chosen a man not of their blood. In the Old West, rumors traveled faster than bullets, and this one carried danger. In every syllable, some heard it as scandal, others heard it as prophecy, but all understood one thing: something ancient had been set in motion. Eli Carter spent the day working beside the warriors, though no one had ordered him to. He helped repair the broken travois, hauled water from the stream, and tended to the horses with hands that knew their language better than most men. He did not complain. He did not look for escape, and the Apache noticed everything. Ayana watched him from a distance. She said nothing, but her eyes followed the way he worked until his hands bled. How he bowed his head respectfully when elders passed. How he never met a warrior's stare with challenge. Among her people, these were signs not of weakness, but of balance. That evening, Chief Noko summoned Eli to the council fire. The elders sat in a half-circle, their faces carved from memory and firelight. Iona stood behind her father, her presence calm but unyielding. The wind carried sparks upward into a darkening sky. You wonder why there is talk of a wedding, Neko said, without preamble. Eli nodded carefully. I do. I don't claim what I don't deserve. The chief studied him for a long moment. Long ago, he began, before forts, before railroads, before your people crossed the great water, there was a law older than war. If a woman saves a man's life and brings him into her lodge, and if he wakes beside her at dawn, then the spirits have bound their paths. 1, elder added. It is not marriage of flesh alone. It is marriage of fate. Eli's chest tightened. And if the man refuses? A heavy silence fell. Nako answered slowly. Then the spirits will still take their due. Refusal brings misfortune not only to him, but to us all. Ayana stepped forward then, her voice calm but strong. This law was not made to trap, she said. It was made to protect. A man who wakes beside me must either stand with us, or stand against us. Eli felt the weight of her words settle into his bones. He looked around the fire at faces hardened by loss, by betrayal, by endless fighting against a world that kept closing in. But not all hearts were settled. From the shadows stepped Tokala, a war leader known across the plains for his fury. His scars told stories older than Eli's entire life. His eyes burned with a fire that did not welcome. Peace. This wedding is weakness, Tokala said. The soldiers will hear of it. The settlers will hear of it. They will think we bend. Noko met his gaze. Or they will think twice. Tokala snorted. Men like him always choose their own in the end. Asterisk Eli turned to Tokala and spoke, without anger. I won't pretend I haven't worn the same boots as the men you hate, but I'm done being used by flags and lies. If standing here costs me my old life, so be it. The fire cracked loudly, as if the land itself responded. A scout suddenly burst into the circle, breathless. Riders, he said. White soldiers, less than a day away. Asterisk, the mood shifted instantly. Peace was no longer an idea. It was a risk. Asterisk Nako stood. Then the wedding will not wait. Asterisk Eli's heart skipped. Tomorrow? Asterisk no, the chief said. At dawn, Asterisk Ayana met Eli's eyes. There was no fear in her face, only resolve. Asterisk at dawn, she said softly, 321 warriors will stand not to threaten you, but to witness. Asterisk Eli looked toward the dark horizon, where dust already hinted at approaching danger. He realized then what this wedding truly was: not a ceremony of romance, but a declaration, a line drawn in the dirt of the West. And when dawn came, the world would see which side he stood on. Dawn did not arrive quietly. He could hear the warriors long before he saw them. Asterisk 321 Apache. Warriors took their places as the sun rose, forming a wide half-moon along the ridge overlooking the village. They stood silent, mounted and unmounted, rifles and lances resting easily in practiced hands. This was not a threat. It was a witness. Asterisk Eli swallowed hard. No man in the territories had ever married beneath a sky like this, or under eyes like these. Behind him, the drums began. Ayana emerged from her lodge as the rhythm deepened. She wore white buckskin trimmed with blue stone and eagle feather, her hair braided with symbols of her clan. She did not look like a bride meant to be claimed. She looked like a woman choosing her path. Asterisk when she reached Eli. She stopped and faced him. Asterisk, you can still walk away, she said quietly. No one will stop you until the drum ends. Asterisk Eli looked at the horizon. Far off, dust clouds marked the movement of soldiers close enough to be seen now. The old life he'd known waited there, running, hiding, answering to men who never cared whether he lived or died. Asterisk then, he looked back at Ayana. I woke up in your world, he said. Seems right I learn how to stand in it. She nodded once. The ceremony began not with vows, but with silence. Chief Noko stepped forward, holding a staff carved with the story of his people. He raised it toward the rising sun. Asterisk today. He said, the land listens. The spirits listen. This man has slept under our sky and lived. He has stood unarmed among warriors and remained upright. He has been given the chance to flee and chose to remain. Asterisk Neko turned to Eli. Will you protect my daughter, not with ownership, but with honor? Asterisk Eli answered without hesitation. With my life. Asterisk the chief turned to Ayana. Will you bind your fate to his, not to tame him, but to walk beside him? I will, she said. The drum beat slowed. Then a sound that did not belong. From the ridge opposite, U.S. cavalry riders appeared, 24 men in blue, flags snapping in the morning wind. At their head rode Captain Reeves, his face twisted. With rage and disbelief, asterisk, there he is, Reeves shouted. Arrest that man. He's aiding hostiles. Eli stepped forward before anyone else could move. "I'm not running," he said calmly, "and I'm not hiding behind them." Reeves laughed bitterly. "You think dressing like them makes you one of them? Step aside, son. This ends now." Chief. Noko raised his staff. "This land is not yours," he said. "This man stands by our law." Reeves' smile vanished. "Then your law dies with him." Before he could give the order, Ayana stepped forward, raising her hand high. The warriors did not fire. Her voice carried across the plains. "If you shoot him," she said, "you shoot me. And if you shoot me," she gestured toward the ridge of warriors, "you will not leave this valley alive." The wind stilled. Even the horses seemed to sense it. Reeves looked around. For the first time, he truly counted them. 321 warriors, calm, ready, not afraid. This was not a battle. It was a decision. Reeves spat into the dirt. "You're choosing savages over your own kind," he snarled at Eli. Eli met his gaze, steady and unshaken. "No," he said. "I'm choosing who I am." A long moment passed. Then Reeves raised his hand. "Fall back," he ordered. The soldiers hesitated, then turned their horses. The dust cloud shifted away from the village, retreating back toward the forts and fences of a shrinking world. The drum resumed. The ceremony finished beneath a sky now fully awake. As Ayana placed a feather in Eli's hand, a symbol of trust. Given only once, he understood what this day would become. Not just a wedding, a warning, a legend, years later. Men would argue over whether it truly happened. Some swore they'd seen the place, the wide valley where the dust never quite settled, where the grass still grew taller than anywhere else on the plains. Others said it was only a story told by old scouts and half-drunk trappers, a tale stretched thin by time. But every version ended the same way: a white man who woke beside a chief's daughter, and lived because he chose mercy over fear. Eli Carter never returned to the settlements. Those who went looking for him found only an abandoned homestead, its fence repaired one final time, its door left open to the wind. Some said he'd been killed in a border skirmish. Others claimed he'd crossed south. But the Apache told a different story. They said, a man with kind eyes and steady hands lived among them, one who never spoke loudly, never boasted, never raised a weapon unless there was no other way. They said he learned the old language slowly, respectfully, as one learns a prayer. They said he became known not as a warrior, but as the man who stood at dawn and did not run. Ayana became more than a chief's daughter. She became a bridge. When traders came without rifles, she met them. When soldiers came lost or wounded, she sent them away alive. When her people argued, she reminded them of the morning when 321 warriors stood in silence, not to kill, but to witness. Chief Nako lived long enough to see the valley spared from war. Before he died, he placed his staff into the ground beside Eli and said, "You did not take my daughter. You earned her by staying when leaving was easier." Children grew up hearing the story by firelight. They heard how the wedding had not been sealed by rings, but by restraint. How guns were lowered instead of raised. How one man's choice reshaped the fate of many. And when they asked why the warriors had stood in such number that morning, the elders answered, asterisk, not to threaten the man, but to remind him what his choice protected. Asterisk, travelers passing near the valley sometimes claimed to see two figures. At sunset, a man and a woman standing on the ridge, watching the land as if listening to it breathe. They said an eagle often circled overhead, feather catching the last light of day. Asterisk, and if you listened closely when the wind was just right, you could almost hear the drums again, slow, steady, like a heartbeat, not of war, but of a promise kept.